Parents that are aware of their children masturbating. What weird routines do they do to try and hide the fact that they are doing it? One time I was called to dinner after I had just finished masturbating. I went downstairs and my mom asked me what was on my shirt. I looked down and to my extreme horror my shirt was absolutely blasted with CM. She gets some of it on her finger. I told her that it must have been snot from the dog. I'm pretty sure she knew. When I was 14 my uncle was home visiting and my parents and him were all out in the living room chatting. So it's the middle of the afternoon. What better time to beat off, right? I'd usually hear if my parents were walking towards my room when I was doing it so I could quickly grab a blanket or some crap and turn on Rune Escape. This time I don't hear my uncle creep up to the door. He slams on it and screams, "Stop freaking jacking off, I need something from my room." Forget what it was. Tape or something. I proceeded crap a minimum of 6 bricks while grabbing a pair of shorts and rushing to open the door. I open it and he comes in laughing. Just messing with you, sees I hand him what he wanted and he walks out and says, "Seriously though," during a family gathering and laughs as he heads back to my parents. I'm gonna reverse this one. My mother could swear my youngest brother was yanking it in the bathroom. He just goes in there with his phone for an hour, so I'm thinking I have to talk to this boy and tell him what's up. So I do. Turns out, yeah, he doesn't wank it in the bathroom. He just uses the bathroom as an escape. He goes in and does his business, but gets caught up playing Candy Crush or Fruit Ninja. According to him, he masturbates in his computer chair like a normal 21st century male. I am exactly the same way. I'll lose track of time and wind up staying in there until my legs fall asleep. It's a combination of peace and quiet and too lazy to get up. Not actually mine, but a friend told, if I unplug the modem while it's flashing like heck and I hear screaming my son is playing, if I don't hear a word he's fapping. That's just cruel. My dad once yelled at my brother and me about the wastebasket next to the family computer. Freaking empty that trash. It smells like freaking sperm in there. That's when I knew that he knew. He could smell it. I was at my friend's house when I was like in 9th grade. We were LANing. Anyways, I had my back to the wall, and you couldn't see what I had on my monitor. I was watching P as my friend's mom walked in doing her chores. She gave me a funny smirk look as she was taking out the laundry. A few moments later my friend came into the room and started laughing. "Dude, I can see you watching P." I turn around and there's a freaking mirror right there. This one makes me cringe and laugh at the same time. When I was a kid, really young, my friend's mom walked in on 3 of us dancing around the room to the bar scene music from Star Wars with our pants around our ankles, just having fun, showing off and being stupid. She was not amused. He goes to sleep and then always after 15 minutes, he goes to restroom and washes his hands. Doesn't pee. I know this because there is no flushing sound. Showers all the time. When the massaging shower head broke, I replaced it with an old-fashioned one. My water bill went as low as the kids' spirits. Slightly off topic, but I heard about a guy who munched snorker bread, a crispy bread, so nobody would hear the fap sounds at night. In a small room with 20 other guys, all doing their military duty, they kept up with his crap for a couple of nights until they finally had enough and took his blanket and threw it in a corner, leaving him naked with a bread in one hand and his dong in the other. As a little girl, I noticed it felt very nice when I climbed poles. My parents explained to me where babies come from when I was 3, but I didn't put that together. I assumed I was the only one who got this special feeling. My elementary school had several large poles in the recess area, and I would regularly climb them and stay there the entire recess. Occasionally teachers would ask me what I was doing. I was a quiet kid, and it's kind of embarrassing to realize now that I was stroking off in front of the entire school. I heard my son fapping in the bathroom once, so I asked, "What are you doing?" just to freak him out, and he yelled back, "Homework." My little brother, 15 years old, needs a new jar of Vaseline every few weeks for his chapped lips. Get him lip balm, just to mess with him. I'm personally hoping to avoid this issue by telling my son, if you need some quiet time, do me a favor, lock your door, clean up after yourself, and if you ever have any issues, talk to me. That along with the masturbation is normal. I'm hoping to not have to accidentally stumble into a room with that smell or snap laundry in half. Having said that, I fully expect to have to roto-rooter my tub out in a year or two. Sigh. If you ever have any issues, talk to me. DIT's not working today. I used to have this Mr. Potato Head back massager when I was little. You'd turn it on by pressing his hat down and he became a giant vibrator. Essentially, I would masturbate furiously with that little guy and thought no one was any the wiser to what I was doing. There's no way they didn't hear him buzzing in the middle of the night. Pre-locked door, clear bedroom floor, post-locked door, underpants sitting in middle of carpet. That's just super obvious. Maybe he's okay with you knowing. When I was in high school, I'd use my sister's computer in her room because she was away at college, and at the time I didn't have my own computer. My mom worked until the early evening, so I would often use the couple of hours between when I got home from school and when my mom got home from work to look at P on my sister's computer and jerk off. In hindsight, it was a strange thing to do for several reasons, but at the time I was too much of a teenager to think twice about it. So one day, I'm perusing a favorite website of mine when I start feeling tired and decide to take a quick nap on the floor. So with an image of a naked redhead on the computer screen and my dong sticking out of my fly, I went to sleep knowing I'd still have plenty of time when I woke up to finish before my mom got home. A short while later, I was woken up by my mom knocking on the door, which I had been smart enough to close. I scramble, zipping up my pants and closing the tab. I opened the door and my mom was crying. She had come home early after she had received a call from the vet confirming our dog, who had been sick, had terminal cancer. But the thing is, at that time my mom almost never knocked on doors. She just opened them, or she'd knock once then immediately open it without waiting for a response. We didn't have locks on our doors. So I've always wondered if my mom came home that day, opened the door and saw me sleeping half naked on the floor with P on the computer screen and just said nope, closed the door, knocked loud enough to wake me up and decided to never mention it again. If you got a computer next birthday Christmas, she saw. Not a parent, but when I was a kid, whenever my parents knocked on my bedroom door, I'd always say I'm getting dressed, don't come in. It wasn't until I was much older that logic took over the hormones and I realized they either knew I was masturbating or they thought I was some kind of clothes obsessed 14-year-old boy who couldn't figure out which darn outfit wouldn't make my hips look fat. They knew. The power shower was a dead giveaway. My normally quick 10-minute shower kit turned into 45-minute hot water hogging W. If you knock on the door during said power shower, he flips out and yells at you about invading his time and how teenage boys need longer showers because I sweat now, because he never sweat before. Anyways, I try to leave him alone, but every now and again, for all the times he ruined my lovemaking by beating the door down over a paper cut or a lost remote, I, like a good parent should, all but kick that freaking door down, because now you know what it is like not to finish. Most of these things are things I do, yet has nothing to do with masturbation. Long showers, frequent toilet visits, playing music, reading news sites, yep, stuff I do but not to cover up masturbating. Speaking of, mothers can smell it. When I was younger and after a good fap session with windows closed, I usually went to bed with my fap sock. Her name is Annie, well hidden. I just realized this now, but my mom used to come to my room the next morning and say smells like young stallions in here : I thought she just meant that as a compliment. Beware the infamous danger wank, where teens will put themselves in a risky situation. That is, the odds of someone walking in a high and rub one out before anyone gets there. Beware. Or the infamous suicide wank, when you're having a wank, just before blowing the load, shout out mom or dad, then try and finish the job before they get into your room. I threw a towel over the basement window in my parents' house because that's where the computer was. My father asks, "Son, why is there a towel there?" Mike, my friend down the street, was outside harassing me the other day, so I put that there to pee him off. Completely believable. Dang, I'm smooth. Should have said it was because of glare. Well, maybe no kids, but my wife does in the shower. She takes very long showers. I act like I don't know. One night I overheard her accidentally let out an OMG while the vibrating shower head was going. Randomly decides to go take a bath. Brings laptop so he can watch a TV show. I actually do bring my laptop in the bathroom for non-pee related reasons. In fact, I'm typing this from a toilet right now. He washes his own socks. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. I have really long showers and don't masturbate in them. I just like basking in the heat like some weird lizard creature. Getting into a hot car and letting the heat radiate all over your body is one of the best feelings in the world to me. Everyone calls me weird. Pooping 3 times in 1 hour is a pretty dead giveaway. Source: I used to poop 3 times in 1 hour. Maybe I was an overly observant teen, but back when I was a teenager I knew that the key to discreetness was fitting it into existing routines with no standout activities. My door was always closed and locked whether I was in it or not. I never used PC speakers, always headphones. The desk was positioned so that upon entering the room you only saw the back of the PC monitor and you had to walk around a desk to see the monitor, or more than my head, for that matter. Always had the TV on, even at night. Always threw away my own garbage with incriminating tissue surplus. Always took 10-20 seconds to open the door after a knock with lazy teenager huffs and puffs thrown in as I lazily made it to the door. Plenty of time to repant if that was an issue. I mean, if they really cared to know if I did it, they could tell by the mere fact that I was a teenager. But goddamn it, the when belonged to me. I will never forget the time when I went over to my friend's house when his parents were out of town. I come in, sit on his couch and turn on the TV. His laptop is in front of me. Whatever. There is a bottle of lotion on small table beside me. Whatever. There are tissues on the coffee table to the left. Whatever. I am watching TV with him for 30 minutes. Then some sex scene came on TV and I started thinking about it and I realize everything I would need to jack off is right here. It suddenly hits me and I jump up and yell, "This is your freaking masturbation station," and he admits it. Welp, throwaway cause this is relevant and hilarious in retrospect. I was a frisky teenage boy and I never really learned to use my hands much until I was older. Like my whole mindset was do the motions you really would as if it was for real happening. Anyway, I would rub on stuff and I had a giant collection of stuffed animals from when I was young. Rubbing on them eventually wasn't satisfying enough, so I took scissors and cut a few of them. Went to town. Not so bad. Okay, so I had this giant freaking Donkey Kong thing. Like life-sized, and I used that one, and boy oh boy did I go to town on Donkey Kong. Years later, we're moving out of the house and my dad offers to help me with my stuffed animals and suggests I give them to charity. I then freak out and just go nope. I got it, and like I was tossing them down from my bunk bed and he goes to pick up Donkey Kong and I just leap down and say no and I rip all of them out of his hands and just take them to the garbage. Never explained it and I'm sure he knew but just never brought it up or whatever. TL. DR. Gave Donkey Kong a banana. What's up with all the dong socks? Am I the only one thoughtful enough to bring in some TP? Not a parent here, but I think my mom and I both knew my habits. To this day she still says, "Bill, I am 81, can always use more socks." I'm really going to have to try this sock thing one day. I'm 27 and literally never have. Again, why the socks? Just why? My mom walked in on me once. She thought I was smoking pot and I closed out of the window real quick and she kept asking what I had in my hand, so finally I yelled back my dong. I took a lot of long showers. Midday, take a 45-minute shower. Just got out of the pool, 45-minute shower. Just woke up, 45-minute shower. Just got out of the shower, 45-minute shower. It was really obvious now thinking about it. Whenever my parents asked me why I was in the bathroom for so long and so frequently, I would just tell them I was masturbating to cover the fact that I was smoking. As a mother, my son's pillowcases shatter like glass when I put them in the washing machine. That's just nasty. Why would your son want to sleep on CM pillowcases? My 13-year-old nephew comes on his floor because where else am I gonna do it? He doesn't understand the concept of planning ahead or keeping Kleenex or toilet paper in his room. I told my sister about this and the look on her face when she realized that those weird dried spots on her son's bedroom floor was priceless. A few weeks after I told her about this, she was in my nephew's room and stepped in something wet. She looked at her sock and looked at my nephew and said, "Nephew's name. What did I just step in?" He looked at her and said, "Come on, mom. You know what it is." Apparently she screamed at him and told him quite a bit after that, and then texted me to tell me how traumatized she was. I had my potential grandchildren on my sock. All I could do was laugh. TF is wrong with your nephew? As the child in this scenario, I casually mentioned one day to my parents that I keep a toilet roll in my room because I find it hard to breathe on a nighttime because of snot in my nose, thinking it was an awkward enough admittance that they wouldn't assume it was anything else, until my mother said, "Oh, I know what teenage boys have that in their rooms for." I told the boy this last year, "Son, it's yours. Wash it as fast as you want. Water is way cheaper than babies. Boy showers a lot." Loudly playing Darude, Sandstorm to cover up the furious noises. Rhythmic jacking and strobe lights. Gets pretty furious in the middle there. Doesn't anyone have daughters here? My girls are young. They ask for privacy sometimes to be in their bedrooms. I'm like, go for it, kiddo. My son discovered himself very early on. I asked the doctor what I should do and she said I should explain that it's natural and that I shouldn't make him feel ashamed, but that I should explain that it's something we do only in private. Well, I think I drove that point home a little too well when we were talking one day about him being left home by himself. He's 7. It's not gonna happen. And I could watch anything I want on TV. Yes, you could. And I could say cuss words and not get in trouble. I giggle, yes, buddy, I guess you could. Then he gasps, I could go upstairs and play with myself all I want up. Why yes, I suppose you could. I had a special technique for dealing with parental intrusion when I was younger. Whenever confronted with a knock and a question from my dad or mom, I would always reply, "Stay out, I'm jerking it," or "I'm snorting lines." You want to know what's an anal teen or some variant on that theme? They knew I was masturbating sometime. But when? They couldn't know. I hid in plain sight. One of my friends had a housemate with a rather interesting routine. And he had, as far as I know, absolutely no idea that anyone else was aware of it. His first step, at least from what I could hear, would be to close his door and address some imaginary woman who had apparently sneaked inside when he wasn't looking. "Well, what are you doing here?" he'd say, his voice audible through the wall. "Oh, really? Well, I guess I'd better take my pants off." Then, a few seconds would pass, after which he would speak again. "So, how about you get naked, too? I'll just lay here and wait for you to be ready." "Oh, you're ready now? Well, go ahead and climb on top of me." Then, it would be several minutes before anything else would become audible. But then the next part of his routine would begin. Anyone within earshot would hear the guy's bedroom door open and then slam, after which he'd sprint down the hallway to the bathroom and slam that door. He'd be in there for a few minutes. The toilet would flush, and then we'd all be treated to a second performance of him slamming the door, running down the hall, and locking himself in his bedroom. So, in short order, his routine went like this. Click. "Oh, look, a sneaky woman. Now we're both naked." Silence. Slam. Rapid footsteps. Slam. Silence. Toilet flushing. Slam. More rapid footsteps. Slam. From what I've heard, he'd do this every night. At one point, someone suggested that he might have been talking to a webcam model or something, so they accidentally reset the router after hearing the guy's door close. But he went right through the same routine, talking to someone who wasn't there before beating a hasty retreat to the bathroom. TLDR. Imaginary intimacy. Dumb dialogue. Slamming and sprinting. The slams really made it. That must have been a joy to witness. I'd probably never stop laughing. My oldest daughter sometimes does it when watching TV, just out of boredom. She's 5. She'll sit there and just rub herself through her pants if she thinks no one is watching. We can always tell, because she gets really tense and her legs stick straight out. We usually just tell her that if she's going to do that, she needs to go in the privacy of her room. Sometimes she stops, sometimes she goes to her room. Can't really scold her for doing something most people do. Just make sure she understands it's something to do in private. One afternoon, one of our cats was sitting in her lap and she was petting it. Walked away, came back into the room and noticed her legs sticking straight out. She had her hands in her lap, under the cat. I walked right the frick out of the room and sent my wife to deal with that crap. Just nope. We tell our 2 sons the exact same thing. We just have massive laughs when the oldest, 3 1/2, Walks around with a CD on his dong. Parents who knock on their kids' doors and then immediately open it anyway. What's your thought process? This reminds me why I moved into a 5th floor apartment with no elevator. My mother hates taking a lot of stairs, medical problem, and she would be in my apartment every day if it weren't for the stairs. I love my mother, but she has zero sense for privacy. It's over, mother, I have the high ground. Walked in on my kid jerking off once, never again. To his credit, he took it like a champ. Dude, you're supposed to knock. He's asserting dominance. I respect that. I had a bed platform for a while, and it got very squeaky. I was cleaning one day, reaching to my left, tossing on my right, the whole time squeaking the bed. My mom didn't knock and immediately open. She straight up bust through the door as quick as she could, having approached it with stealth, whereas any other time she would drag her feet through the hall like a sloth. What it did accomplish is it almost gave me a heart attack. I jumped nearly half a foot. It was that abrupt. Needless to say, I haven't been able to stop wondering what my mother was hoping to see. I can't even look at her without thinking she's some kind of a creep. You hear your son's bed squeaking, so you sneak up and bust through the door. Why? To catch you and shame you. My son's doctor told me to start knocking on my son's door and waiting until he responds come in at his 10-year-old checkup. I hadn't really thought of it before, but I made sure to do just that. Only time I come in is if I've knocked multiple times and I figure he is asleep. He will fall asleep with his glasses and TV on, so I come in to take care of that. Good, my mom has opened my door without me giving her permission since I was like 9. It gave me quick reflexes I guess though. Don't ever make your kid drastically try to find something to cover up with though. It's not a good experience. I have a bolt lock on the inside of my door for this sort of situation after I'd be getting dressed as a teen and people would just wander in despite me putting a do not disturb sign on the door. Knock knock don't come in, I'm getting dressed opens door anyway. Happened so often in my teenage years. I always assumed the knock meant put your dong away, I'm coming in. And as a former teenager, I was always ready to put my dong away at the slightest threatening noise. Those footsteps are getting awfully loud. I had to move back in with my folks after splitting from my wife. My mom tried to pull that crap on me, but I was smart and the door was always locked. So instead I would get, the door's locked, yeah, no crap. Why are you trying to barge in here? I could be naked with a hairbrush up my butt for all you know. My mom barged in once while I was jerking off and it was to me till my friend died. Well, that escalated quickly. Very modern family thing here. My parents never knock, so I usually lock it so they can't open and catch me doing something wrong. But that habit of never knocking kind of instilled in my brain, so I never knocked as a kid either. Saw some crap when I walked into brother's room once. Also know that every time my parents do lock the door, they're doing the deed. Therefore, teach kids to knock and wait until you open. Do the same for them. Don't waltz in. Don't barge in, because they'll do that to you too. Learn from me. Bonus points for just saying knock. Knock at the same moment as opening the door. My mum taps her nails on the wood of the door as she opens it. Just thinking about the sound makes my hackles rise. My mom did and still does that when I go back home to visit once a year. I'm 30 BTW. Tock tock tock, can I come in? Opens the door. Sometimes I'll open my eyes to her grabbing empty water bottles out of my room. Oh sorry, either you were sleeping. Yes Pauline, I was sleeping until you decided to come in at 7 AM on my vacation time for no reason. The worst is that my grandma is nothing like that. Only her. No respect for privacy or sleep. You have 2 seconds to put your dong away and close that incognito window. I'm in my 30s. My mom lets me know she decided to come over by pressing her face up to the windows, sometimes from the backyard. Knocking. Parents knock. My mom took away my door not because I shut the door to change my insulin pump while she was yelling at me for not having my college apps done 2 months early. Just before I left home, my mom and I got in an argument about me sleeping all day, as I worked night shift at the time. I went in my room and locked the door, which was apparently a no-no at 19. She took the doorknob off, so I went and bought one with a key. One day, they are gonna find why we are always staring at our wallpaper. Rookie move. Always keep another browser window opens in the background. Oh boy, I can't wait to leave the room without closing the door on my way out. I finally got the courage to call my mom out on that after 2 years of living on my own. My mom hits me with "because me and your dad knew it bothered the crap out of you." I can't imagine. My parents would knock on the door and wouldn't come in until I opened the door for them. Really helped feel like I had some personal space in a very crowded house. They sound like great parents. Also, why do they leave the door a little bit open when they finally leave? Why? My mother walked in on me using an electric bikini trimmer once. I had one leg propped up on the edge of the tub and was leaning back against the wall with my pelvis tilted upwards. So here I am taming the wild bush, and boom, my mother throws open the door and then acts shocked at what I'm doing. She then later told me that any man that wanted a woman with shaved pubic hair was a pedophile. BC only children do not have pubic hair. I was like, WTF ma, I shave because the hair itches me and I don't like it. I love how parents always assume that a young woman shaving anything has everything to do with having physical relationships. My mom got pee that I started shaving due to swimming and summer activities. Maybe you don't have any issue showing off your bush and furry legs at the pool, but I do. I knock on my daughter's doors and then if they don't answer or say hang on a minute or whatever, I'll leave. My youngest daughter says I'm the only parent she's ever heard of who does this. She's been shopping around. When I was 11 or so, I knocked on my parents' door to have them help me open something and they didn't answer, so then let myself in. They were making love. So I'll never do that again. I also don't just walk into people's houses even if they tell me to. I wait for them to open the door for me. When I was 8, I had a friend down the street call and ask me to come over. He told me just to walk in. I do and happen to see his dad walking around completely naked. So needless to say, I'm pretty scarred for life. You guys had doors? I don't have a parental answer, but man did my parents learn quickly. My dad would always say, hey you and serious girlfriend can come watch TV upstairs with us if you want. Nah, cool. And usually it was just because what high school couple loves hanging out with their parents? We just didn't wanna spend our time hanging out with them. But obviously there were some more private reasons too. So one night before we had time to react, my dad knocked and threw open the door and looked straight into my butthole with the way the bed was positioned at that time. Honestly, glad that traumatic experience happened to him. I've never had a reason in anyone's house for any reason to throw open a closed door. Only excuses if a bathroom door got closed, and then you slowly open going hello to double check. Straight into my butthole mayo. My boyfriend's mom did this. Ended up walking into us doing the deed. She now waits. I know last time I went into Guna Kitten's room just after he showered. He was naked and I yelled at him for being naked in his own bedroom, but maybe this time he'll have figured out how to get dressed in 20 seconds. My mother, probably. I like to air dry. Woman, leave me alone. My mom did this to us every day growing up. I have 6 siblings and my god, she managed to pee all of us off every single day with this crap. High school was the worst. I don't need you to remind me 6 times in 30 minutes to wake up. She still does this to my granddad who lives with them because he can't hear you. Just go in. My granddad will occasionally put a chair in front of his door so that she walks into the door when it suddenly stops, but she still doesn't learn her lesson. I could see your granddad smiling when he hears the knob turn, followed by a small thud as the door hits the chair, then a louder thud as she runs into the door. Lol. It's the 0.5 second of minimize that web page warning time. Never has it ever been long enough as well. My mother-in-law popped the bedroom door open the first time I stayed at their house. I was 25 and he was 27. My now husband and I weren't even going to be sleeping in the same room. We were talking privately and she opened the door because she didn't want us having relations in her house. For frick's sake. Switch flipped after we got married. She gave us a gift bag that included condoms for our wedding night. What the frick, woman? My mum used to do this, followed by rooting through my phone, computer, and school bag. Created a lot of distrust that ended up with me leaving the house at 14 and not coming back till I was 17, when I found out my father was worse. My dad used to do this all the time, until one day I stopped him and told him, look, you're free to barge in whenever you want to, but someday you're gonna come in and I'll be dong in hand. He laughed. I laughed. He knocks and waits now. My mum did this to me with my ex. We were under the covers with his dong up my butt. Had an entire conversation like that. His mum did this to us, but I was copying doggy style. There was no conversation that time. Mostly screaming. I think your ex is the top comment. Not a parent, but I never had a door to my room. The excuse was when they bought the house when I was 2, the door wasn't attached, so for 19 years, they never thought to install one. I'm sitting in my room now, age 21, still no door. The truth is my mother doesn't want me to have privacy. She gets mad when I ask about the door. Gone through my personal messages with friends on my computer when I went to the bathroom, yells at me when I lock the door to the bathroom when I'm peeing, even though she'll barge in if I don't. Has pulled back the shower curtain because I've been in there a long time and wanted to know what I was doing instead of, using her words to either ask why I was taking so long or just say that I was taking too long. Like a sane person. Yeah, my mother is awful. Luckily my parents are getting divorced so she doesn't live here anymore. But my assumption is the parent doesn't care about the child's privacy, that they're entitled to know what they're doing all the time, but they don't want to make it seem like that's what's going on. So they knock first to be polite. I know many people who do this and aren't parents, and it's because they don't think about the person's privacy, just whatever they need in the moment. I think this applies to young kids too, but they don't know better and don't understand the importance of other people's privacy. This exactly. It sends the message that you have no rights or that your feelings don't matter because simply by being born to them, your parents have almost control and authority over your life and every move. It creates a total lack of trust and issues with privacy and boundaries. Not me but my mom. Well, she says she wants privacy, but what I want is more important. She took the lock off of my bathroom door because I was closing it to shower and she wanted me to leave it open. I'll be moving out ASAP. My mother never lets me close the door to my room. I'm in college, and I'm home on break. I'm used to staying up until 3 in the morning, so I was up just watching Netflix, and at 3 in the morning, she got up because my door was closed, and opened it. Nice woman. Does the most ridiculous crap sometimes. My mum used to do this until one day, I didn't close the pee, I didn't put my dong away. I just stared at her and said a simple yes. She never did it again. The real power move. Man, my mom doesn't even let me close my door. With a username like that, I am not surprised. Imagine having the type of parent who don't even knock, just walk in. I could be besting the crap out of my dong and they'd just walk in. I got very good at hearing footsteps of intent from quite a distance. Plenty of time for me and whoever else to get our clothes back on. This happened to me when I was about to mount my GF in her bedroom. There was a knock, so we sprung to action and she was pulling her school skirt down and I was rolling off the bed to hastily get back into my jeans. But her mum opened the door approx 1 sec after knocking and caught me running like heck, naked, with a bouncing boner, trying to make it behind the door. But our eyes met, so I know she saw me. I stood behind the door and she immediately closed the door again when it clicked what was happening. I'm giving you time to put your dong away, but not hide the pee. A masturbator can do both at the same time. It gets even worse when your parents don't knock. My mum used to do this to me as a teenager, and then when my so and I moved into their place to save up some money, she still did this. It not only irritated me, but my so as well. We would come home and she would have cleaned the entire room. I repeatedly asked her to stop entering the room when we were not there, as I found it not only to be a breach of my own privacy, but my so's as well. I finally had enough one day and yelled at her when she walked in on me while I was dressing. Her reaction was to say, "Well, it's my house," and then stomp away like a child. I love my mum, but for frick's sakes. As long as you're under my roof, I can knock and open any doors I want. Hey, I see you grew up in the same house as I did. Notice I made the distinction of the house and not my house. It was made very clear to me, often, that it wasn't mine. In fact, most of the time I barely felt welcome. I knock and ask for permission to come in because I'm not a giant pile of buttholes. I'm respecting your privacy by knocking but asserting my authority as your parent by coming in anyway. You're not supposed to be on those kinds of websites. I remember one time when I was 21 I had my girlfriend over and we were freaking. My mum knocked on the door. I responded that we're busy. She knocked again so I called out louder, "Mum, we are making love." "Nope, not enough." She opens the door and sticks her head in. Sees that we are under the covers and then decides to waltz and sit on the end of the bed and talk to us about some mundane crap. All the while, I'm still inside my girlfriend, in a state of shock. Not exactly 100% relevant but was reminded of it and wanted to share. What's something you're hiding from your parents? Serious. How broke I am all the time. I have told my parents that life and business is going well when I had less than $10 to my name. Less than $10. Internet Explorer, and also Firefox. You see, I renamed Firefox Internet Explorer, and changed the icon as well. I did this in every place possible, and now they think they are using IE when in fact they are not. Firefox is hidden in plain sight. When I was 13, I am now in my 40s, I pretended to have abdominal pain for 3 days to get days off school. On the 3rd day, my mother took me to the doctor. Oops, I played it too long. I considered coming clean but was too scared of the consequences. I was in too deep. I had to push on, and my mum was a scary school teacher back then. The appointment was at about 4 in the afternoon and I continued the charade with the doctor, but thought that surely he would to expose me as a fraud. He didn't. I should have won an Oscar. The only thing I really remember of the examination was getting the finger up the bum. I needed a visit to the toilet after that inspection, and when I returned to the room, I heard my mother and the doctor discussing surgery. Yikes. By 8 PM that night I was under the knife getting my appendix removed. If I thought I was in deep earlier, getting wheeled into surgery had me crapping bricks, but I was in even deeper now. I couldn't just jump off the bed in my surgical gown and say it was all a joke, so I took it like a liar. I still wonder if the doctor saw my perfectly healthy pink appendix and thought, crap, it wasn't appendicitis. Oh well. Cha-ching. My wife threatens to tell my mother every once in a while to see me squirm. Also, I still see that same doctor. That the reason they don't babysit my daughter very often, and only if it's my mom and at my place, is cause I was sexually abused as a kid by my dad once. He doesn't remember, or chooses not to, and it was back when he used to drink a lot. I don't think he'll do it again, but it's not a chance I wanna take. My sister has gotten kinda in my face about it when I try to make excuses about why I don't want her over at my parents without me, and the best way I could explain without going into the details is I'm not comfortable with it. Your sister might be getting kind of worried now. Probably doesn't understand and wants to know what is able to worry you so much that you won't leave your daughter with your parents. My father has O blood. My mother has O blood. My brother is B. For those who don't know the rules to blood types, 2 O's can't have a B. They can only have O. I'm pretty sure my mom thinks she's gotten away with the perfect crime. Nothing to worry about my dad, because he has been dead for more than 15 years. I'll never bring it up though. What's the point in drama? That I'm not coming home from Ireland. My parents have always assumed that I intended to move to Alaska to work and then come home, meet a nice Irish girl, get married, and buy a home in town with my earnings, live and die in our country with our family. Since I've stepped foot off the plane in Juneau, I haven't once considered anything more than a visit home. Every time we talk they ask something along the lines of me moving back, and I dance around the issue. I'd rather not deal with the endless calls from family, friends, and neighbors saying I've gone mad or turned my back on our home, which I have. I'd just rather fade out of their minds than deal with it head on. I can't rationalize or justify it, so I don't approach it. The fact that I hate my family and that I intend to cut any contact with them once I settle my debts with them. That I'm replacing their wedding rings for their 25th wedding anniversary. They were stolen over 20 years ago and financial problems have made it impossible for them to replace the rings themselves. Careful, your dad's probably gonna try to do the same. They don't know that I truly do not want them to move away when they retire. I work for my parents, so I'm with my mom every day. She almost died 3 years ago and now has some brain damage when it comes to my parents. I am on call 24. 7. I make sure she takes her meds, I do their shopping, I keep the house clean, anything they need done, I am their go-to person, and when they move, no one will be there. What if my mom forgets her meds and gets sick? What if she gets confused? What if she is sad and I'm not there to bring her flowers and coffee and make her smile? My address, my phone number, so many things. That I'm FWB with a recently divorced 47-year-old woman. I'm 19. Well, nobody in their right mind would tell their parents that. I hear things that aren't there. Footsteps, knocking on doors, phone ringing. My parents think I am a drug addict or something and I let them because I think they would disown me if they knew I'm some type of crazy. You could be schizophrenic and that's something you want treated before it gets too bad. Many homeless people have this illness, that's what it winds up doing to people. Drives them out of reality. Make no mistake, it's an illness not a choice. Any doctor would gladly treat you and give you a livable life. A tattoo. My dad doesn't know and he's a pretty traditional guy. Doesn't matter that I'm 24, have a college degree and a job, he'll still think I'm throwing my life away for having one. My parents forced me to drop out of school and cut me off when I got mine at 19. It's on my ribs and they only saw it by accident. I am now a semester behind and I owe about 10k in loans. That I lost my virginity to a girl last Friday that I was supposed to be giving guitar lessons to. I ate the last Mars bar when I'd already had 2 out of the 6-pack. My dad told me whoever did it and won't own up is ruining this holiday. I ran into a car in a parking garage and now owe the guy $1,000 worth of car repairs. I'm a college kid who only has a summer internship as a source of income. My little sister told me in confidence that she has been smoking pot with her new boyfriend and his friends. Actually, her words were, I don't know what it was, shaped like a blunt, but they didn't say. My mom is a drug addict and my father would flip out. I'm 17, so mostly everything. My extensive pen collection. Welcome to the club. Recent professional success. All my life, anytime I have shared success stories with them, my parents would give me very baby-like praise for it rather than saying that they are proud of me or anything like that. The only time they give me real advice and treat me like an adult is when they think that I am struggling, so that is what they will think of me for the rest of my life. They will never know, even if I become a millionaire or win a Pulitzer Prize. If I tell my family I got a raise, they all need money suddenly. It's pretty sad, so I just don't tell them. During my freshman year in college I was charged with drinking alcohol in public while underage. Hired a lawyer and paid him in weed because I was a broke college student and that was all I could have afforded. I ended up getting 10 hours of community service. Paying a lawyer with weed sounds more illegal than what you were charged with. I'm really curious. I haven't slept with any guys yet, so I won't say I'm bisexual, but during gym class in college I thought the guys were much better eye candy than the women. Unfortunately, the college course I was taking to see all that eye candy was police foundations, and my parents have already made clear that the gay cop they know is a disgrace to the force and that he shouldn't be allowed on in the first place. I can't imagine how they'd react if I said I hope to find a lot of gay police officers when I get on the force. My ex is a gay cop. The other people on the force love him. My divorce. I don't want to hear my dad run his mouth about how it's all my fault that my ex-husband had an affair, took all my money, and is suing me for spousal support so he can get his PhD. I already paid for his Stanford masters. I did literally everything to keep the marriage together, but my dad will look at it as all my fault, cause that's how he sees the world. My PTSD and what really happened on deployment. My brother knows, but I can't tell my mom. How do you tell your mother who thinks you're a sweet innocent little boy that at 20 instead of being college I was in Iraq seeing things I will never forget in my lifetime. Oh, and I smoke a lot of weed. Sleeping pills give me nightmares. I hid that I had Parkinson's from my mother as she was dying. Since she died, I've been more open. My spouse and I are in a romantic but almost entirely non-intimate relationship. Neither of our families know this. We don't believe it's anyone's business. I know it's not uncommon for married couples to lose interest in intimate activity years down the road, but we entered our marriage unsure if intercourse would be a part of it, and as it turned out, it's not. We have never had intercourse by textbook definition. Most people would not understand this. My parents definitely wouldn't. They would think something was terribly wrong with our marriage and they might even think it was a sham of some sort. Luckily this is not the kind of thing they would ever have a way of finding out. Hey, if you're both happy with your relationship then there's no reason to need to unless you want children, etc. I am starting not believe in the religion they believe in. My mom thought I didn't want to go to tutoring because I am lazy, but in reality it was because of my social anxiety and low self-esteem. I'm 26 years old and have a great job that pays well, but I have a ton of student loan debt that I am trying to take care of, but it's hard because not only am I supporting myself, but my mother too. She has a job as a caretaker, but doesn't get enough hours to make enough to pay all her bills. So I help out every month, which doesn't really help me out, because it means I don't have enough to help pay off my loans faster. As much as it sets me back financially, I think about all the sacrifices she made growing up, so I have never hesitated to do what I can to help her. However, she doesn't know that it sets me back so much and I don't want to tell her, because I love her. Good man. My opinions of them. My wife just took a pregnancy test 2 days ago and it was positive. Our parents would be thrilled to have another grandchild, but we want to go into the doctor to get confirmation first. We don't want anyone to find out yet, but I'm dying to tell someone, so I'll just mention it here where it'll go unnoticed. I smoke. I'm in my 30s. I'm a grown adult, and yet I cannot bring myself to smoke in front of or even admit I do it. Same goes with my in-laws. I know either set of parents would be so disappointed in me, and before anyone asks, yes I know I should quit. I am so goddamn gay, like holy crap. I am a raging pit of flaming homosexuality. It's all covered up by this hardened, straight, quiet exterior though, so it's all good and healthy though. Every time the subject of a girlfriend comes up at family gatherings it's like a game of Frogger with a relative swooping in from each direction. Truth is, I'm out to all my friends, but until I finish college in 2 years I have to play the bit. My entire family, including parents, are extremely conservative, straight out of Kansas types. There was a moment towards the end of high school where I thought about letting it out, but then my aunt came out and was completely berated and ostracized by my family. It was horrible and I still keep in touch with her secretly. I'm really excited to become financially independent, because as hateful as they are, me letting my parents pay for my college knowing how they will react feels deceitful. I'm just doing what I have to do though. It's life. My dad thinks that my cross-dressing was just a phase. He doesn't know I'm planning on competing to be Miss Salt Lake for the Pride Parade. I had a small overdose on coke and MDMA last week. Been trying to hide the symptoms all week, slowly recovering though. I came here to say my dong piercing and ended up having feels. Crippling depression to where I've thought about suicide several times in the last 2 months. Please consult a therapist, or talk to someone, anyone, even PM me if you have to. Just don't do it. I know it sounds cheesy, but life is worth more than what it seems like. Don't let it go to waste. I love you. Be well. How alone I am. They think I have a large circle of friends and go out and have a lot of fun. I'm alone most of the time. It is only really hard when I have to lie on my birthday about plans to keep them from getting sad worrying about me. I've been married for 3 years, and my mom still thinks I'm a virgin. Being sexually assaulted starting in the 7th grade onward and then up head twice before I left for college. Just random guys because my parents' views were that it's a woman's fault for being a temptress, so I always just assumed I wasn't saying no the right way. That I genuinely hope I don't live past 30. I'm 27 and just want it to be over. I don't want to do it myself, just want it to end. Not straight. When I was younger, no more than 8, my best friend at the time touched me inappropriately. He was a year older than me, and I didn't know what was going on. Tried inserting objects into me, but I resisted. He moved across town and I didn't see him for like 2 years. I spent the night at his new house, and he tried to hump me and I felt uncomfortable with it all. Luckily I haven't seen him since. I don't want to tell my parents because I don't see a reason to. It's been about 11 years, and I haven't had any severe issues. I have anxiety and commitment issues, but I believe it's something I can handle on my own. What did your parents teach you that you had to unlearn? My mum told me you couldn't wear tampons until you've had a baby. Tampons were a revelation for me when I learned all the cool girls at school used them. That in the real world, people don't have extreme and violent fights over minimal things, and then act like nothing happened once it's over. Also, throwing tantrums are not the appropriate way to handle problems. Poor credit financial decision making. Had to learn some of that the hard way and correct them. And you don't realize that your childhood lifestyle was a financial sham until you're already spiraling down that same drain as a young member of the workforce. My mother always said I didn't need education. I just needed to marry a rich man. Lol, my dad tells me I need to marry a rich woman, in addition to majoring in chemical engineering. Being passive aggressive. My mum is the worst at that, and I used to follow in her steps, until a friend told me I was doing it. Now I am trying to retrain my mum. It does not work. I go to visit my parents, and let's say my mum wants me to help her out doing something. If she doesn't ask clearly, I won't help. Because if I do she will be like Nuaru, don't worry I can do it. But if I don't she will be heavily citing, walking all around the place like she is busy and has so much work to do, looking at me meanly. I would be like, do you need help? She would just answer, no I'm fine. Well if you're fine that's fine for me too. I hate when she does that. How hard is it just to ask? She wants my sisters, my dad and me just to guess what she wants. And we are so used to it that we just know. But I'm not acting on it anymore. I see my sisters being peed off at me but not saying anything. They're as much passive aggressive as my mum. Of course I'll have a mail later, or when we're talking on the phone a few days later, she will hint that she's angry at me. But it's over. I have decided that if they want anything, they can ask. If I need anything, that's what I do now. It's so much easier as well. I never feel angry at people for stupid things anymore. Of course people aren't mind readers. That you have to adore your parents because they birthed you and raised you, regardless of whether they actually did anything to earn your admiration or trust. My parents brought me up to believe that bullies were all people of low intelligence who would never really get far in life. This led me to believe that if I just bided my time I would never have to deal with them again, and I didn't really develop much defensive behavior. They could not have been more wrong. To finish my plate go back for seconds. Learning to quit before I'm full, stuffed, has done predictably wonderful things to my waistline. When I'm back at their home for a meal, mom always pushes me to go back for more. Same here. My mom overserved our food way too much. Huge plates of rice every day for dinner. She wouldn't let us leave until we finished. Really gives you horrible eating habits. Oh, and growing up fat. My parents paid bills based on the cutoff date rather than the due date. They also acted like a good credit score was not a big deal. They drove theirs into the ground and then started putting things in my name. Took years, but now I pay my bills before spending anything on unnecessary things and have paid off all the delinquent bills they left on my credit. I am now teaching my 6-year-old to manage her own money by not spending all she has, but saving a bit too. The other day she had $10 from saving up her allowances for a while, and when she went shopping, she spent only $6 because she said she wanted to save the rest. I dang near cried. I had to stop calling pantries food closets. BRB, getting a screw spinner out of my tool bucket in the car hole. That marriages had to be miserable. Wasn't until I started going to sleep over at a friend's house and I saw his parents actually laughing and having a good time together that I learned that marriage can actually be good. I felt the same way when I got into my first serious relationship and spent more time over at his house. It blew my mind to realize that married people in their 50s actually spent time together and enjoyed each other's company, instead of retreating to their separate corners of the house after dinner. That wanting things is selfish. My grandmother raised me, and now that I'm older she started to keep telling me this. I'm selfish for buying things I can afford with money I made, just because it doesn't match her list of things she considers a priority. Wanting can be selfish, but it isn't always selfish. JFC. That you can't ride around everywhere with a cooler full of beer or liquor and use your kids as the backseat bartenders while you drive. For now, we're about 5-10 years from rolling parties. Communicating my feelings and how to properly express them. My family has some horrible communication skills and it's not something I realized until my husband pointed it out to me when we first started dating. We had a tendency to explode, then completely shut down and not speak to each other if we ever got into an argument. Sometimes we would say the meanest possible thing just to hurt the other person. Occasionally, the arguments would turn violent, but that was usually between my sister and I. My parents never turned violent. Admitting that we were wrong about something was also difficult for us. Also, mind reading. If something was upsetting us, we would never express it and just left it to the other person to guess what was wrong. My husband thought it was crazy how we communicated with each other, and again, I didn't realize it until he pointed it out. It took years and I honestly still struggle with it, but have a much easier time analyzing a situation and expressing my feelings in a calm manner. That you will die if you leave the fan on at night. My mom is a very shy, non-social, passive person who has always had terrible self-esteem. She prides herself on not having needs and being the person who is okay with anything no matter what. Of course, none of this is actually true. She merely doesn't directly ask for her needs. You find out what her needs were over a long period of passive-aggressive behavior. When I was growing up, she wanted to instill in me the idea that I would always let others' needs go ahead of my own and that I shouldn't stand out ever, always fading into the background so I don't get in the important people's way. She'd often say, off the cuff, "You wouldn't want anyone noticing you. You wouldn't want to get in someone else's way. Murder Kitty doesn't need anything. Or you don't want to be a bother." She believed she was instilling wisdom by telling me that all clothes I wear, I'm a woman, should be neutral colors, too big, and nothing that would make anybody notice me. Nothing could be exposed above the elbows or knees, or below the clavicle, or I would get nasty comments from her. Looking back as an adult, I recognize that she was probably trying to protect me, but it really fricked me up well into my 20s. I didn't wear a single article of clothing that was flattering, fun, or fashionable until I was 23. Besides the clothes thing, this resulted in having terrible self-esteem throughout my teen years and early 20s, especially about my body, dating, allowing myself to spend money on frivolous things once in a while, and most importantly, learning to take up space in the world. It's a good thing to directly state your needs, to say I don't want that, to stop caring what others think about you and how in the way you supposedly are, and to put yourself first most of the time. I now realize that the people who are passively putting others first are very mentally and sometimes physically unhealthy people who are, ironically, creating a bigger burden on people by not caring for themselves. That you always have to clean your plate at a meal, and just because someone asks you are you sure that's enough food, that doesn't mean you should get more food. I am still unlearning these things. Yes, parents always had the finish your food rule instead of eating what we actually needed or was hungry for. I think they thought it was teaching us to not be wasteful, but instead it instilled bad eating habits. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. Practicing doesn't help if you don't know how to do the nebulizer correctly. As my karate teacher used to say, wrong practice makes wrong perfect. Knuckle cracking does not in fact cause arthritis, or have any detrimental health effects at all. Despite extensive medical documentation confirming this, my mother still refuses to believe it and gives anyone that does it around her an earful. In a darker sense, that domestic violence is unacceptable. My Mexican grandmother and to an extent, my own parents, taught me that screaming fights, throwing things, hands to the face, and shove slaps and such were normal, but they were okay because we lived in a culture where women are allowed to fight back with their men. Just had to be sure to get him good. The older I've gotten and the more I've steered away from dating men of my former social class, the more I've learned about how unacceptable and incredibly fricked up that kind of mentality really is. That you need to cook poultry until it's dry as crap. I make the turkey every Thanksgiving these days. Not to speak out when people are being treated unfairly. Turns out that there are people who don't wonder what is wrong with me for doing my own thing as long as I'm not rude to them. It's perfectly fine to go watch a movie without my sister. I'm still waiting for that moment when owning Pokemon Black will ruin my future. Yeah, I can wear my short-sleeved House Starkov winter full t-shirts. I can even wear them in the winter as long as I have something else over them to keep warm. If you have a fever, it is perfectly fine to wait a few days until you feel better before cleaning your whole living space. Also, if you're coughing every few steps, not wanting to spend an hour walking to a shop for stuff you don't need and back does not mean you're lazy. No, chicken is not supposed to be burned outside and raw inside. Salt is not the only thing to put on food. Dad can cook. He doesn't burn the chicken. When I started taking cooking classes and we got creative in the kitchen, it turned out that he is good at it. No one is entitled to your time. If someone wants to hang out and you don't want to, you are allowed to have other plans. Those plans can include pizza and a movie. You can have a previous engagement with the couch. Dad taught me how to order at restaurants. I get my date's order and give the waiter both. If there's a question, like does my date want salad or soup, the waiter is supposed to ask me and I ask her and then she tells me and I tell the waiter. I was taught this was the way it's done, like not putting your elbows on the table. Surprisingly, I did okay for a long time. But obviously, this style of ordering came from a time where women were closer to property. My so has her own interactions with the wait staff. I no longer am the go-between. My mom still gets upset when I don't order for her at a restaurant. I've never done it for any of my partners. It's a foreign, rude concept to me. That I don't need to obsessively conserve everything. We weren't poor when I was growing up, but we had a pretty tight budget and not a lot of extra money for anything. My dad would pour water into the chocolate syrup to make it last longer. Same with soap. I always felt bad about finishing something, like a package of crackers, or a jar of peanut butter. This has persisted into my life now. My parents collectively make a lot more money, plus I have my own part-time job. I still find myself not using enough shampoo in the shower because I don't want to use it up too quickly. Or, when I get my monthly Sephora Play box, those samples last forever because I feel bad finishing them, even though that's literally what they're for. I have a really hard time throwing anything away that I can think of any kind of use for, even if I know I'm not going to use it. It's a struggle. A happy medium. There isn't such a bad thing really. Most people are really wasteful. Being mindful is good, just not to the point you are stressing about it. That adults, or people older than I am, will always be smarter than me. Farthest thing from the truth. Heck, I'm not even as smart as I used to be. I used to know everything. If you're going to do something, be the best there is at that thing or it's not worth doing. Play in the band, be first chair, join a team, win the game, be the captain, score a goal. An A is practically a B, and a B is might as well be failing. It's led to a life of success, respect, stress, fear of failure, inadequacy and depression. There isn't much I can do purely because I enjoy it, and even those things leave me feeling guilty and shameful that I wasn't doing something more important. So I haven't quite unlearned it yet, but I'm working on it. My mother taught me how to be a lying, manipulative, narcissistic prick. I'm only just now realizing this, and it only manifests with romantic partners. I'm working on unlearning this now. That you should respect your elders. If you're dong, you're dong. Growing up, people in my family talked up my dad as a good driver, and I believed them. My grandfather, on my mother's side, was his biggest advocate, and my dad always vouched for his driving as well. So I internalized that and that became my idea of a good driver. A few years ago my grandfather and dad drove a family friend around, and that was when I learned that they're both overly aggressive, impatient, and risk-taking drivers. Now that it's been pointed out to me, I always notice all the tailgating, lack of signaling, and questionable lane changing. Like a good chunk of people, mild racism. Also, that you can undercook steak and it's freaking delicious. I like my racism like I like my steak, rare. How to be in a horrible relationship, as in father who didn't want to be there, mother who put up with it for years. Can't tell you how many years I wasted recreating that nonsense until one day I said, my god, this is a relationship my parents had. Still wrestle with it, to be honest, but at least now I'm aware. My father wasn't a very good man. but he tried to be a good father. He taught us that nothing is more important than family and that you should give your life for your family if needed. He taught us that loyalty was more important than feeling loved or valued. There's good threads of intention in those lessons, but it really fricked up my family dynamic for a long time. He taught us that if your pain is bad, you shouldn't confront it, but you should drink and suppress it until it comes out in bursts of violence. This one was hard for me to unlearn, and I'm still working on it. It's even harder for my brother. That I'm a disappointment. It took well over a decade after moving out to unlearn that one. I'm on the verge of moving out and I'm fairly certain I'll be in the same boat you were. Your grades are the only thing that matters. For my whole life I was taught this, and for the most part, until the end of high school, I was able to get good grades effortlessly. I did quite well on standardized tests and got away with blowing off a lot of homework for school. My parents weren't happy with this because if you put in more effort you could get straight A's. My dad called my 33 ACT score pathetic, so it was pretty much ingrained in my brain that I wasn't good enough. A bunch of my cousins were great students that ended up going to prestigious colleges, Ivy League and such, so I was always compared to them and treated like a failure. Once I myself got to college I couldn't handle it and ended up failing out. After that happened I was dangerously close to being suicidal for a while. If I have terrible grades then I might as well be nothing, right? I ended up getting a job where I've been moving up pretty fast. Every time I talk to my parents they keep telling me that I won't amount to anything without a degree, but I make about as much right now as my friends who recently graduated. I know they aren't 100% wrong, but they definitely aren't 100% right. My parents always taught me to be polite, but nowadays people always tell me that I'm too polite to the point that it seems fake. My mom always told me to be nice and talkative to everyone. This totally backfired and I ended up being fricked over by a lot of friends I had as a kid. But luckily this helped me learn who my real friends were. I still treat everyone with respect, but my previous experiences have led me to become much more reserved and cautious about who I make friends with. It's also led me to become extremely introverted. That I am nothing more than an annoyance and inconvenience, and that I can trust no one, and that no one will ever love me. Not really, not selflessly. I still have serious self-esteem issues about it and a lot of other stuff that happened, but I have my own family now that actually does love me and care for me, without ulterior motives involved. I can trust people. Oh, and a whole host of obsessive behaviors about food and weight gain, and what a healthy portion size is. And I have a very, very hard time with quiet environments. It took a lot of soul searching on my part to realize that getting a degree from a prestigious university and getting a ridiculously high paying job is not the only path to happiness, and that I'm allowed to make happiness my #1 priority. I was raised to believe that I would be a complete failure if I didn't go to university right after high school and make as much money as possible. Taking a gap year was not an option. Going to trade school was not an option. Money came before happiness because money would lead to happiness. I ended up dropping out. My family disowned me. I beat myself up, thinking I'd never amount to anything. I fought through the worst depression I'd ever experienced and worked many short-lived jobs over the course of 5 years, until, by pure coincidence, I stumbled upon my true calling in life. I took what was supposed to be a temporary job at my local animal shelter. Within the first week I knew it was what I was meant to do. I've worked there for 2 years now. I come home covered in puke, poop, and blood every day. I cry for those animals almost every day. I only make $8 an hour, but I would do my job for free, and I absolutely love every second of it. I might struggle financially at times, but I'm happy, and that's all that matters. Redditors who grew up with overly permissive parents. What was the most absurd thing you were allowed to do? My mum let me travel to another city at 15 to meet a guy I met on Yahoo Chat. 15 years later we're married with 3 kids. But WTF mum. I was allowed to saddle up my horse, take my Savage 22/20 gauge over under gun, some beef jerky, a canteen, a sleeping bag and bedroll tied to my saddle and ride up into the Ochoko Mountains and camp overnight, then ride back the next day. Also did the same with my motorcycle. I was about 13 or 14 at the time. That sounds fun, actually. Wish I didn't live in a crappy one-horse highway town. As a kid, my parents were perfectly okay with me flipping the golf cart into the ditch, towing people behind ATVs on plywood, making pipe bombs, and shooting each other with Roman candles. However, they didn't let me watch Harry Potter because they didn't want my faith to be in witches and wizards. Tries to figure out which of my cousins you are. My friend's mother was an extremely relaxed parent. He could do pretty much anything and she would say, "Patrick, stop." Well, one fine December day my friend thought it would be funny to see how flammable the fake trees are. He lit a match and held it to the plant. We were still in his house at this point when the plant caught fire. He picked it up and tried to put into the sink to spray water on it, but the faucet didn't reach the plant. My brother picked up the plant. Now this thing is fully on fire, and threw it into the snow. His mother stood there the entire time, watched this whole thing go down and only said to Patrick, "Don't do that again." My mother was insanely strict, but she used to send me to spend summers with her sister because she couldn't afford summer camp or anyone to watch me. My aunt gave 0 shoots and didn't want to be bothered with me. I was left to my own devices to, wait for it, wander around downtown Seattle, alone, at like 10-11 years old. I am a girl. I did not have a phone. I did have plenty of go away and leave me alone cash. I was not required to check in, or even be home by any certain time. This was in the 90s. As a kid, it was amazing. As an adult, I cringe when I think of how easily something horrible could have happened. My mother told me at an early age that one day I would rebel, and instead of fighting me she's going to guide me through it. Said that she'd rather know what drugs I'm doing and which women I'm dating so that she can provide said guidance than for me to hide it. Said that she wanted me to sow my wild oats while I was young, so that I could buckle down when it really mattered. And, well, that's exactly what she did. And all of it was absurd. We were dirt poor, living in a mobile home in the crappy part of town when I turned 12. Between child support, disability and welfare she was only getting about $600 mo. When she went after my father for more child support, raising it from $50 mo to $400 mo, he countersued for custody. That was fun, so she had to sell drugs to get by, making our trailer the trailer everyone always hung out at. My teenage years were a non-stop party. I'd normally wake up to find upwards of 10 people crashed on the floor, in a single wide. I started smoking, drinking and being sexually active at 12, weed at 13, acid and M at 14. I was also 13 when I had my girlfriend move in for the first time. She kept running away from home, the last time getting in a truck with a random dude who was going to take her to Texas, and our moms agreed maybe it was best she stayed with us for a while. From that point forward my mother had no qualms with girls sleeping over. That said, I haven't had an empty bed since I was 15, and have zero experience being single, which I see as a bad thing. But what can I do? While my home life was a constant party, school life was miserable. I was always the hated kid, the poor, dirty, dorky kid that people loved to frick with for the sport of it. The rest didn't want to associate with me out of fear of being targeted. Because of the contrast between home and school I had a tendency to, well, not go. Got sent to BD school in 7th grade, and expelled 4 times in high school. To her credit, she was able to use the situation to make friends of all of my friends, and use them to control me. They would do whatever she wanted because they didn't want to lose their invitation to the party. If she didn't like someone she would turn the group against them. She knew everything I ever did. 2. She was like a mob boss, whose only purpose in life was me, and she was right about sowing my wild oats. By the time I was 18 I was pretty over partying, didn't care much for most drugs anymore, was tired of chasing bus and just wanted a real girlfriend, etc. And went into said relationship with ample experience for my age. I ultimately got an engineering degree and will have been married 16 years in 4 days. Live a nice, quiet middle class existence. That's quite a success story I'd say. I grew up in a nudist household so you could spend the whole day naked if you wanted to. It didn't seem weird to me but I've met some people who mentioned they would enjoy that. People who say they would enjoy nudism are either 1. Actually right 1% chance. 2. So freaking wrong 99% chance. Everyone wants to be a nudist when talking about hot girls. Less want that when we're talking about parents old people. Not my parents. who were moderately permissive. Bill had a friend in HS whose parents would get high with him, supplied his younger brother alcohol and Vicodin on request, etc. Fast forward to today, both have major addiction and self-medication issues. Anecdotally, you can be a chill parent, but don't freaking enable and encourage your child's substance use. Edit 1. Just to clarify because of so many responses. 1. Anecdotally was key for me there, as it would be for anyone else here. And 2. Copying a response I have elsewhere in line here. Many of the responses that say it worked out well for me usually feature a parent that is still moderating in some capacity, though, protecting from impaired driving, interacting with dealers, bad product, etc. I'm Marizo talking about the type of parent who sets no limits and just wants to be 16 again. It's my belief that such an approach tends to install an idea that substance use is always okay and always a viable solution. I didn't do anything terrible, I don't think. Mostly I just stayed up way too late and skipped school a lot. Still did all the homework and graduated on time. Probably the worst thing I did on a school night was sneak into my church around 2 AM. It wasn't technically a B&D because as a youth leader I had my own key. We played the pipe organ and made Coke floats and nachos in the kitchen. I think the next morning I told my parents I went out and would go to school late. They called in sick for me. Coke floats and nachos. Wholesome. Upper middle class upbringing here. My parents got me a car and didn't give a crap about what I did as soon as I got my license. I once drove 150 miles to Baltimore after high school one day to get some crab cakes. Understandable. Proper crab cakes are the best, and you can't beat blue crabs. I started smoking weed in the house at 15. Tried to keep it hidden and only did it in the middle of the night when parents were fast asleep. But this one time my parents were going away for a weekend and they missed their flight and they came home without texting me and walked in on a few friends and I smoking in the living room and watching Netflix. Dad walks in and immediately smells it. He looks at me and tells me open the window jackass, you're going to stink up the house. They found a more expensive ticket and left later that night. I feel for him. If I had a kid 15 and he's smoking pot in my house, there are two things to consider. He is going to do it whether I allow him to or not. And I'd rather him do it where I know he and his friends are safe and not on the street or somewhere worse. My parents weren't purposely over permissive, but they were heavy drug addicts for the first 20 years of my life. They just didn't have the capacity to properly raise children. I was a full-blown crack and H addict by age 15 and they did absolutely nothing about it. I did literally anything I wanted with no repercussions. I mean, they knew their daughter was a prostitute and even encouraged it at times. But they've been clean a few years now, and without the drugs they're really good parents to my little brother, and I myself have a little over 9 months clean. Congrats on being clean. I wanted to try mushrooms when I was about 16. I told my mom and she agreed to trip-sit me, basically let me and my friends do mushrooms in the living room. She helped us steep it into tea, and then once we were all gone, she carefully timed her steps and ordered a pizza, baked cookies and watched movies with us, making sure everyone was having a happy hippie trip. To this day, my mom advocates her happy hippie trips of doing drugs with a sober babysitter. I've now moved out. I do smoke cannabis with prescription, but I'm a rather functional human being with no party drive, but a deep love of quality time with my mom over a pizza. This one is actually pretty cool. Stay out until 10 PM or later. For a teenager, that's okay I suppose. For a 9-year-old it is not. From the age of 15 I didn't have a time that I had to be in it on the weekends. I would stay out until 3 or 4 AM drinking on the streets with my mates, come home and go to bed. Not a word would be said to me the next day by my parents. When I was 16, myself and a group of my mates decided to get the boat from Ireland to Wales and get a train up to Manchester to see if we could score some football tickets. We left on the Friday morning and didn't come home until the following Monday. My mum called me on the Sunday asking me where I was. I told her I was at the football and she said enjoy, that she wasn't putting a dinner out for me, so, edit, I was living in Dublin at the time. I had crazy arbitrary rules growing up, but my friends always insisted I could do whatever I wanted. The biggest was that I was allowed free range to try new things. Want to make cookies from scratch? Having never even seen it done, give it a whirl. Want to make an entire lean-to-survival shelter from things you get out of the woods? Watch out for snakes and be careful with the machete. Want to ramp the road by the railroad with your bike? Listen for the train and pay attention to traffic. I was allowed to make a mess, get hurt, make my own fun from an early age. It was pretty great. If it doesn't kill you, disable you or get you pregnant, you can fix and recover from it. Have fun, no permanent damage. Go to school in a Mike Wazowski costume when it's not even Halloween. My mom was worried I was not getting drunk with my teenage friends. We're talking age 15-16. So she would gently coax me into drinking, offer wines to taste and to make me cocktails to get used to the taste of alcohol, and so forth. I never took up drinking, despite all her efforts. I grew up as a straight-edge designated driver. Also, starting junior high she told me you can skip school if you don't feel like going, but only a couple days a year. I asked her can I carry those days from year to year, she told me sure. I ended up never skipping a single day of junior high or high school. That lady knew what she was doing, let me tell you that. Take a sweater, it's cold. Moms will be moms. I had an older brother who went to Penn State. At the time, it was at its peak in being a huge party school and was a top contender in those infamous rankings. We lived 2 hours away, and I was only a junior in high school who had just gotten his license not too long ago. I would often tell my parents I was taking the car to drive and visit my brother Asu for the weekend. They were just like, okay, have fun, be safe, no questions asked. Also, if you bring your little bother to a college party and tell them they're thinking of going to the university, everyone makes it an effort to get you super fricked up. High school me had a good time, but always surprised me my parents actually let me go and with so little resistance. When I was a younger girl, most of my best friends were boys. Mum constantly allowed me to have sleepovers at these boys' houses. Guess what happened? We'd stay up all night playing video games and watching movies. Shrug. Me too. A woman my mom worked with tried to tell her how irresponsible it was to let me stay overnight with the guys. My mom assured her nothing was going on. I would have told her, and 2 years later that woman's 16-year daughter turned up pregnant. It was amazing. I was allowed to have girls stay over from like 15 plus. My mum didn't want me shagging in a park or anything like that. Only disadvantage was the remarks, such as at least someone round here is having fun, or my personal favorite I had to turn the bloody telly up with all that racket. Love you mum X. But you missed out on the greatest of teenage adventures. Trying to find somewhere secluded enough to frick in your car but not so secluded that you will get murdered by transients. My parents used to facilitate my underage drinking. Anytime I would go to a party, my mum would pick up a bottle for vodka for me. What happened when I reached legal drinking age? I had a few beers and went home. Same here. My parents' liquor policy was don't touch the good vodka. I never took advantage of it, and now I'm a total lightweight. Buddy of mine had a mom who would let us blaze at his house, so that we wouldn't get caught by cops smoking on the street. Makes sense, but at the time, 16-17, it blew my mind that she'd be okay with it. Allowing me to go to Cancun, Mexico for spring break with 3 other friends. I was 16 years old. What were they thinking? Drop out of school in grade 7 to play WoW all year. From the age of 10 or 11 on, basically no oversight whatsoever. Both parents worked at night, had a babysitter that didn't even watch me, could do literally anything 4 or 5 nights out of the week including weekends from around 8 PM till 5 AM, have parties, roam the streets, drink alcohol. They never checked their liquor amounts. Complete freedom. You know what I did? Virtually nothing. Few parties but didn't drink. Everyone else had to be home, so I'd be home too. I basically didn't use any of the freedoms. Never did drugs. Never drank. So boring. The longest leash in the world and didn't wander. Not sure if I was just a great kid or if all that freedom took the excitement out of going crazy. Drinking wine, whiskey with my dad when I was 14-15. And after, when I was out at a party, I could call my mom to take me back home at any time. Me being drunk or not, they taught me how to drink and to know my limit. That helped me a lot later in my life. When I was at school, my mom allowed me to drink and smoke. There were limits, of course, but she said that she'd rather allow it than knowing we are doing it behind her back. Also could listen to any music. So when my friends were listening to Backstreet Boys, I was listening to Eminem and Papa Roach and things like that. Also went out a lot, and my mom would drive me, even before I turned legal. The only time she became strict was when my marks dropped. Then she was a bit more strict, but I kept my marks good and had an awesome school life. They allowed me to get a tattoo when I was 13, rainbow butterfly on my shoulder, then 15, crow on my chest, and 16, large black piece on my chest. I regret every single one, especially the chest piece, which I had modified over the years, and will need continual touch-ups because my skin doesn't really like ink. When I was 14 I spent a year in the Ukraine, just me and my sister, 18. We didn't go to school, and we pretty much did whatever we wanted. My parents lived in the US. Also, a rabbi handed me my first beer when I was 9. One time, my mom let me go to bed even though I forgot to unload the dishwasher. It was crazy. Not my story, but in grade 11 at school, second last year, a kid in my class just stopped showing up. It went on for about a fortnight and it got weird. Teachers were really strange about it, all these rumors. Then finally, after about 2 months, boom, he's back. It turns out his dad took a job overseas and his stepmother didn't speak English. So this kid told her it was school holidays and then intercepted calls from the school when they started and pretended to be his dad and told the school he'd enrolled his son in another school. I don't know what his plan was. His dad came home, ripped him apart, came to the school and ripped them apart for how dumb they must be to fall for it. That's not overly permissive. He just tricked everyone. I was allowed to watch South Park in first grade, mostly because my older brother in 5th was allowed to. I was the coolest kid on the playground. 2001. My mom had no issue whatsoever with me hanging with the punks. I slept in parks, public park houses, under bridges, would drink and sometimes first come home at 2 to 3 am. This was when I was 14-16, if at all, etc. As long as I went to school, she was okay with it. Same later on when I, 17, moved in with my former boyfriend, 21. She was okay with it as long as I had my phone with me. By 12 I was drinking daily. By 14 I stayed out most nights till 4 am drinking and smoking with adults. By 15 I was going to raves, doing coke, X, B and S, tagging crap with the homies, doing acid, traveling all over the state. AMD I barely graduated due to missing about 100 days a year or more. Ended up getting into trouble with the law for getting into fights. Stuck me in a program for a year and by 18 I had given it all up in favor of being a decent tax-paying American. Whoa, my 12-year-old has an 8:30 p.m. school night bedtime. Around the age of 15 I turned my shed into a gaming drinking drug hangout. Acid, E, mushrooms, weed, K, you name it. We did it in that shed. Had power run to it with a SNES, and original Xbox, a couple couches, TV, light, and radio. Was totally cool for 2 summers straight. At one point I had like 15 people chilling in the backyard all fricked up and like 8 in the shed lol. My mum let us drink in the basement because if you're going to do it, might as well do it where I know you're safe. She wouldn't let us get plastered. Only I think once did we have someone throwing up. It was around the time when we were 1-2 years away from the legal age. That and letting people stay over because drinking and driving is bad. And drinking and walking home isn't safe either. None of them weeds though. Those things were dangerous. My mum was a cool mum and everyone always loved her and her weird not so much anymore Scouseish accent. I lived at the beach in a tent for a couple of months between my junior and senior years of high school. My folks didn't even realize that I was gone. I know a lot of families don't like buying pets or need to sit down and talk about it, but one day I decided I wanted a bird so I went and got it and no problems at all. See, the yawing, critter crazy me would have taken that as a challenge and bring home increasingly bigger animals. They never made me wash my feet in the morning. Absurdly lenient. My mom grew up with really controlling parents and she decided her best route as a parent would be the opposite. I basically had the freedom to do what I want as long as I informed my mom about it. It was nice not having to hide things and I generally stayed away from ruining my freedoms but doing anything stupid. My dad had lax parents. He would ride bikes off ramps that snapped in half when he landed. His sister dug up a grave. Not me but my cousin. His mom would let us smoke and watch pee in his house when we were 13/14. She was cool. My cuz ended up doing coke and crap but honestly I believe it was more peer pressure. He went to a crappy school than anything else. My parents bought me over £500 of stuff to grow weed, then let me set it up in the corner of my bedroom. I still have no idea why the frick that was allowed. I barely smoked then and I think I was possibly just trying to find the boundaries. Turns out there were none. They were trying to turn you into a horticulturalist. To be fair, I've wasted tons of money on my children's wants. Turns out they've rarely made use of it. It's hard as a parent to figure out what will be useful and what is a waste of money. I lived in NZ for a period of time. When I was 9, my mum gave me $100 to spend in whatever. My parents are willing to let me drink and do drugs when I want, apart from a couple of drugs like Ket and M. I don't do drugs but I like a glass of wine now and again. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.